Hello, friends. Today we have a special episode that will chill you to the bone and make your heart race with fear. Imagine this. You live in an ordinary apartment building where all your neighbors seem like the most ordinary people. But what if behind one of their doors hides something sinister, a plot line for the scariest horror movie? This story is not fiction. It really happened. Get ready, because we are diving into the darkness and mysteries of one of the scariest stories about neighbors. Stay with us until the end, and you will learn all the terrifying details. The main character of our story, Emily, moved into a new house in a quiet suburb. The house seemed like the perfect place for a new life. A peaceful neighborhood, friendly neighbors, and a pleasant atmosphere. At first, everything was just perfect. Emily met several neighbors and made new friends. Everything was going smoothly until one day she noticed something strange. The apartment on the first floor next door always seemed empty. No one ever went in or out, and the windows were always tightly curtained. Emily thought that perhaps the apartment was simply for rent or the owners were away. But over time, she began to notice strange sounds coming from that apartment. At night, you could hear quiet footsteps, creaks, and sometimes even muffled moans. One evening, as Emily was returning home, she met an old woman who lived on the second floor. They started talking, and Emily couldn't resist asking about the strange sounds. The old woman seemed pale and nervously looked around. She said that there was indeed something wrong with that apartment, and that it was better not to try to find out the details. But Emily couldn't leave things as they were. Her curiosity overcame her fear. She decided to find out what was happening in that apartment. A few days later, she noticed that the door to the apartment was slightly open. Overcoming her doubts, Emily cautiously stepped inside. It was dark and cold inside. A strange smell of decay and dampness hung in the air. The rooms were empty and abandoned, but strange symbols were drawn on the walls with red paint. The floor was littered with scraps of old newspapers and some inexplicable objects. Emily felt uneasy and was about to leave when she heard a quiet sob coming from deep within the apartment. She followed the sound and found herself in front of a locked basement door. Gathering her courage, Emily found keys on a table and unlocked the door. As she descended the creaky stairs, she saw a horrifying sight. The basement was filled with old photographs of various people, all of them looking terrified. In the center of the basement stood a table with some strange items on it: candles, knives, and amulets. But the most terrifying sight awaited her ahead. In the corner of the basement, Emily saw a cage with a young girl inside, clearly frightened and emaciated. Emily rushed to her, trying to open the cage, but then footsteps sounded behind her. She turned and saw a middle-aged man with a cold expression on his face. The man started to approach slowly, and Emily realized she had fallen into a terrible trap. The man, as it turned out, was the owner of the apartment and had been keeping the girl captive for several months. He was a psychopath looking for new victims for his dark rituals. Realizing she needed to act quickly, Emily frantically searched for a way out. In her panic, she remembered that she had a mobile phone hidden in her pocket. Her hands trembled as she dialed the police. As the call connected, the man continued to approach, his footsteps growing louder and more menacing. Emily felt fear gripping her, but she knew she had no choice but to fight for her life. When the operator finally answered, Emily could barely force out the words. She whispered the address and situation, hoping help would arrive soon. The man was already very close, his eyes burning with madness. In the last moment, Emily grabbed an old lantern from the table and struck the man over the head with it. He staggered back, losing his balance, and was momentarily disoriented. Emily dashed towards the stairs, her heart pounding so hard it felt like it would burst from her chest. Her ears rang, and her mind raced with thoughts of doing everything possible to save herself and the girl in the cage. She ran out of the basement, nearly tripping on the last step, and sprinted towards the exit. Outside, Emily saw a police car approaching. She waved her arms, trying to catch the officers' attention. They jumped out of the car and, seeing the frightened girl, rushed towards the house. Emily showed them the way to the basement, and the officers quickly descended. A few minutes later, they brought the man out in handcuffs. He screamed and struggled, but the officers held him firmly. Behind them came the rescued girl, her face pale and eyes filled with tears of gratitude. Emily watched the scene, feeling relief gradually replace the horror. The girl from the cage was saved and taken to the hospital. The next day, as Emily was returning home, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. It was already dark outside, and the shadows seemed thicker and more menacing. The neighbors' gazes were strange, and it seemed like they knew something Emily didn't. It was becoming increasingly difficult for her to sleep at night. Every creak and rustle made her paranoid. Emily decided to return to that apartment and find out what had really happened. She couldn't leave things as they were. She couldn't forget the strange symbols and eerie photographs. When she entered the apartment again, she felt the atmosphere was even more sinister. This time she came prepared. She had a flashlight, pepper spray, and a spare phone with her. Emily began to examine the rooms more carefully. In one of the rooms, she found an old, dust-covered diary. The pages of the diary were filled with notes about strange rituals and ceremonies. On the last page, there was an entry about a sacrifice that was supposed to take place during the upcoming full moon. Emily realized she had to stop this madness. She reported all her findings to the police, and they organized a nighttime raid. On the night of the full moon, the police surrounded the house and stormed inside. Emily watched from her apartment, her heart racing with adrenaline. In the basement, they found ample evidence of the man's crimes, as well as new victims he intended to use for his rituals. The man they arrested was sent to a psychiatric clinic, but the nightmare didn't end there. Emily began to notice that strange things continued to happen in her apartment. She saw shadows on the walls, heard strange whispers at night. It seemed to her that the evil she had tried to stop hadn't completely disappeared. Emily moved to a new neighborhood, but the disturbing memories wouldn't leave her alone. She decided to see a psychologist to deal with her post-traumatic stress. The psychologist suggested she keep a journal to express her emotions and organize her experiences. Emily started to detail everything that had happened to her, and this helped her gradually regain her peace of mind. Despite this, Emily continued to feel an overwhelming sense of anxiety. She decided to engage in sports and meditation to calm her nerves. Regular yoga sessions and outdoor runs helped her relax and restore her mental balance. Emily also started attending support groups for survivors of violence, where she could share her experiences and receive support from others. After moving, Emily tried to start a new life. She found a new job, made new friends, and tried to forget the horror she had endured. But nightmares still haunted her at night. From time to time, she heard the same strange sounds in her new home that she had heard in her old apartment. It seemed as though the shadows continued to follow her. She consulted with a psychologist to deal with her post-traumatic stress. Emily understood that she needed time to fully recover. She began to keep a journal where she described her feelings and experiences. This helped her release her emotions and manage her anxiety. One day, Emily received a letter from the girl she had rescued. In the letter, the girl thanked Emily for saving her and shared how her life was gradually improving. This letter became a source of hope and inspiration for Emily. If you enjoy truly scary stories, please like and subscribe to our channel. We have many more terrifying stories coming up, so don't miss our new videos.